Hey everybody, it's Leonie here from Wcki and welcome back to our cocoon wrap. I think this is part 2. I would like to show you how to stitch this up. You've done your square now. I've already started on this side over here, as you can see there. But now let's have a look. Here's the full piece. Let me just turn it out for you like that so you can see. So there's the full piece of it. So what we're going to do now is, in order for us to make the sleeve part, we need to fold and stitch up a section of our wrap. Now, something to take note of. This is about 10 centimeter that I've closed it up. If you want a longer sleeve, you are going to stitch this up higher. But remember, these wraps, they go from elbow to elbow. So what I've done is I've only stitched it up or crocheted it up for about 10 centimeters. And then the rest becomes your armhole. Can you see there? So if you want this bit longer, so let's say for instance you want yours to go from your wrist to your wrist, you will obviously then crochet yours longer, but then this section here will not only be 10 centimeters, you will close it up much higher in order for this to fit more snugly around your arm. So depending on what size of opening you would like here, that is how high you would go. But in this case, on this one, I've gone up for about 10 centimeters. Now, I don't sew up my seams. I've never been able to get them look neatly. I'm extremely critical when it comes to my handwork. I will look at it and pull it to shreds and pull it to pieces and say, doesn't look good. So I have never been happy with just stitching it up. So what I've done, I crochet them. Can you see there? So all I do is I make a string of single crochet stitches, and I'm going to show you now how it gets done. That way, to me, it looks far neater. You cannot see, well, we know now that's where it is, but to me it looks a heck of a lot better than what I have done previously on sewing up my pieces together. So I'm going to show you now how this is done. In order for you to do the cuff, now remember we crocheted this with a 7mm crochet hook to get this effect that we want, slightly loose, a little bit stretchy effect. So for your cuff, we're also going to use our 7mm crochet hook. But can you see that my cuff looks like it slightly pulls in? And here's the reason for that. I used my 7mm, I don't know if you can see it there, where we go. I used my 7mm crochet hook for the first round. Then for my second and my third rows, I went to a 6.5mm crochet hook. And then for rows, so I'm just checking my notes here, for rows 4 to row 7, I used a 5.5mm crochet hook. I used double crochets and back post double crochets, or you can use front post. It's just because I did mine from the inside, that's why I used the back post, so I can get this raised effect. So these are all just front post, front post or back post double crochets, depending on from which side of the work you're facing. But I'll show you now how that's done. And then I ended it off also with a 5.5 with a row of single or around us single crochets, and that's how I finished off the cuff on this wrap. I'm going to do the cuff on the other side exactly the same way, and then I'll do the cuff, the ribbing that goes around the neck, but I won't bore you with those details. I'm just going to show you how to do this, and I did exactly the same pattern that I'm going to use then for the ribbing that goes around the neck and the bottom sections for the rest of the wrap. So yes, grab your yarn, grab your wrap. If you're not ready to do this yet, follow the video, pause it, rewind, watch it again. But in short, let's have fun and let's finish off this wrap now. Right, there we have it. What I've done, I have turned my wrap right sides facing. So there's the right side. You can see my front post double crochets. So right side facing, I've put it down nice and flat. I have now measured from the end up to where I want it. That is my 10 centimeters. And I'm now going to start at the bottom and work my way up. Or if you prefer, you can start here and work your way down. Entirely up to you. There's no right way or wrong way here. It's whatever you prefer. I prefer to start at the bottom and then work my way up to where my marker is. That will note, or that shows where my 10 centimeter is that I'm going to close it on. So can you see I've got a large opening here? Because remember, this just fits over the elbow and it is loose and flowy. Again, if you want this to be not as big a gap and slightly a smaller gap with a longer arm portion, you will then stitch it up or sew it up or crochet it up much higher. But for this one, I'm only going to crochet it up for my 10 centimeters up to my marking. But before we get there, if you have not worked away your ends yet, now would be a good time to do this. And I just want to show you what I do. Again, it's all about choice. It's all about preference, what you prefer to do. I sometimes, depending on the stitch, I sometimes crochet the ends into the stitch as I go along. But because of this and because we were using front post, it showed up too much. So I am just stitching it in and working it away now as I'm done here. What I'm going to do, I've made a slight knot in it so it doesn't run all over the show and I accidentally pull out some stitches, to which I will not be too impressed with myself. But I've got my massive needle here. You can either do it with a needle or you can do it with a crochet hook. And then I just work my way back. Obviously, let's see if it will zoom in. That's where it comes out. So I'm not going to go in there. I might just undo my work. So I'm going to go over that stitch. Now you can decide either to do it down here, because this is where we're going to crochet and close it up. Or if you can do it nice and neatly, you can do it across the stitching in the back. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go into the wool like that. And I'd like to also go through the wool, just to make sure that the pieces that I'm tucking in now, that they actually link in, because sometimes it also helps keep them in place. It can't, you know, it's like it secures them. So I split the wool with my needle. Now it's okay to split your wool, by the way. If you've watched the other videos, whenever I split something, I pull it out and I'll start again. For now, we're going to split our wool. And I just pull that in like that. Just slightly, we pull it to make sure that we're not damaging the shape of our garment that we're making by pulling this too tight now. And when I've gone up a few meters, not meters, a few centimeters or so, I just go back again, just to make sure it's nice and snug. And we go out that end, we pull it through just gently. And please, where's my scissor? Oh, there we go. Please be careful. I think I've mentioned in one of my other videos that one day, in wanting to cut off a piece of yarn, I made a mistake and I actually snipped the garment. Yeah, not one of my best moments there. So let's just snip it off like that and get it out the way. And there, that one is worked away. So I'm quickly going to just tuck this one in as well as that one over there. And then I'll meet you and I'll show you how to crochet this up. Right, let's go. I'm using my 5.5mm crochet hook. Again, it is your choice which one you would like to use. I just don't want to fight with the stitches here to get the wool through. So I've just used my 5.5mm crochet hook to do this. Starting with a slip knot. I'm starting right at the end. You can see I've put the two sides together, and make sure that you've got them in line here, otherwise you're going to have a bit of a gap. I left a little bit of a gap over here so you can see what happens. Can you see there? I've got a little bit of a, can you see there what happens? So there's a bit of a gap there. So that's what will happen. So if you flick it over, can you see there? It makes like a dip down. It's because I didn't secure the ends completely. But so that's what will happen. So when you then crochet across, this stitch will look shorter than the next one because this is not completely in line. Can you see there when I do that? So that's what will happen with it. So this stitch over here is going to look slightly shorter than the rest. So when I'm done here and when I do the ribbing around, I'll first close up that to make sure that they are perfectly in line. So let's start here. You're going to start with a slip knot, and I'm just going to pull it through here quickly. Please forgive me, I'm working around the camera here, so if I disappear, there we go. I'm going to pull it out completely now. I'm just going to secure this in place, and I'll make just a chain to keep it in place. Then I'm going to go into the stitching on both sides. So I'll put my crochet hook in on a stitch over here, as well as in line. Let me just do that so you can see. And on the other side, I'll put the needle in so I can catch it in line. There we go. I'm going to grab the yarn and bring it through, just like that. Yarn over and pull through. Just a little stitch. Now also what I do is my little tail end, I hold it across the top of my section that I'm crocheting up here. That way I can work the tail end away and I don't have to still work that in again. And I'm repeating myself a heck of a lot of times today. Your choice that what you would like to do. And just keep an eye on the marker, because if your pieces pull skew and you might have done something wrong, you will see it going out of alignment like that. So just make sure that everything is still secure and in line. You can choose to put a whole row of pins here for you, whichever you're more comfortable with. I prefer this because I grab and I carry on and then I get pins in my hands, and not a fun thing to do, especially if you're working with clients' items and you prick yourself with a pin. Blood, no, not a good combination. So let's go. So I've got my tail across the top end here. Let's do another one. You just space it. You don't want to make them too tight and too on top of one another, because otherwise it's going to start making little waves for you. So allow the piece to show you where the next stitch should be. And because we're working with such a thick textured item now, I literally just allow the, where it feels comfortable, I'm going to put the stitch in. You will also see when you flick it open, if you can see that you've made two big gaps, you will have some holes in your garment, and we don't want that either. So I'm just going to put the crochet hook in on this side, and again make sure that it is seen on the other side in line. There we go. Grab the yarn, bring it through, tuck in that tail end and make a single crochet. And that is what I will do now up to where my marker is. Okay, now we get to my last stitch. I don't want to split the wool, so I'm just feeling to make sure it goes in between or goes in through the stitch nicely. And there we go. And that's the last stitch. And the reason why I do it on well, obviously we're going to work on the wrong side facing when we do this. And that is why when I now start with my cuff, I'm on the wrong side of the garment, which is why I used back post double crochets instead of front post double crochets. You can decide now to pull this through, work it off, then flick your work around and work on the right side. But I'm just going to do back post double crochets. I'm changing now back to my 7mm crochet hook. The 7mm is what I used on this wrap as well. So I'm just changing back to my 7mm. And now I'm going to start off by making a row of double crochets right around my opening that I have here. It's very important that when you do your double crochets now, is that you space them out evenly. You don't want it to form a little bit of a wave, which means you've got too many too close on one another. Try and see if you can get them in one per row that you've worked out here. But see, the minute you've done your first row, just lie down flat and see whether your first row is actually lying flat. If there's too much of a waviness going on there, then you've added too many double crochets in your first row. What I can say though is that you have to have an even number of double crochets. Because of the stitch we used, let me just show you the other cuff again. Because of this stitch that we're going to use to finish off our work, you need an even number of stitches. So you might have 50 double crochets in your first row, it's fine. I think I've got 54 on mine. As long as it's an even number, because we need to get a back post double crochet from this side now, and then normal double crochet. So let's start. Remember, change back to your 7mm or whatever crochet hook it was that you used to finish to crochet your garment or item. And we all know double crochets. I'm going to start off by making a few chains. Sorry, I don't know where my other crochet hook is. This is the one that feels like it gets stuck. I don't know why. I think it's because it's a weird plasticky thing. I'm just going to make 2 double crochets because they are rather large. And then can you see here, that's the beginning of my double crochets now, and I've got a bit of a gap there. Remember, our pattern has some gaps in it, so don't think you've got a hole in your work. It is because of the stitching that we've used at the end of the row. So I'm going to put in my first double crochet there. I'm going to gently nudge it in there and then just do a normal double crochet. And that will be number 1. You will count as you go along because, as mentioned earlier, you want an even number of double crochets. So double crochet again, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. So there I've made my first 3. I'm going to go and work around now and add my row of double crochets, and I'll meet you back here. See you now. Remember, an even number of double crochets. There I've come to the end of my row, and I'm just putting it down flat to make sure I don't have any waves. Can you see it? It is nice and flat. So I didn't put them too close, but I also didn't put them too far away. It must just be comfortable, because remember, we're now going to do back post double crochets, and you need to be able to get in behind the stitch. And if your stitches are too tight, then you are going to have a bit of a challenge. So let's just close off this row. Make sure that you've got an even number. Let's close this off with a slip stitch. There we go. And now I'm going to change to my 6.5mm. Now for the stitch, when we made our wrap, we used front post double crochets, and we stepped down into the previous row to make our front post double crochets. Now we're going to do something slightly different, just slightly, not too much, I promise. We are now going to use, so let me just get my yarn sorted here, double crochets as well as back post double crochets. But as always, I'm going to start off with my chains. I'm only making 2, otherwise I make a bit of a loop and I don't want any loopiness hanging around here. So there's my starting chain. So this will count as my double crochet. And then I'm going to make a back post double crochet. Now can you see there's my next double crochet. So I'm going to do a back post now. So the same, if it was a front post, we would have gone in like that to do our stitch. But because we're doing back post, it's yarn over and we come in from behind. Same concept, we grab the yarn, first 2 loops and the next 2 loops, yarn over, and then we do a normal double crochet. Then back post, yarn over, coming from behind, first 2 and the last 2, and then a normal double crochet again. And that's what you're going to do right across or right around until you get to the end. So it's a back post double crochet and then a standard double crochet. At this point you can't see much effect. When you get to the second round you will start seeing the effect, and it really looks lovely. As you can see from this side, let me just turn it out again for you. That's the effect that we're going to get. So it's a back post double crochet and a normal double crochet, and I'll see you at the end of the round. Okay, that's the end of that round. Don't know if you can see on yours maybe, but there's a slight, the ridge is starting to form. So now we've done our first row with our 7mm, which was the same size as what we did our wrap. Rows 2 and 3 you will do with a 6.5mm. Now also please, and I know I've said I'm repeating myself quite a few times, if you decide to do it with a 7mm crochet hook throughout, it's your choice. I like to give it a slight bit of a shaping, so that's why I've changed from row 1 for the 7mm, rows 2 and 3 will be with my 6.5mm hook, and then rows 4, 5 and 6 I'm going to use my 5.5mm crochet hook, and then the very last row, row 7, I'm going to use also the 5.5mm crochet hook, and I'm only going to add a row of single crochets. So I'll put it up on the screen for you, but row 1, your double crochets that you made for the first row was done with using my 7mm crochet hook. Rows 2 and 3 will be the 6.5mm crochet hook, where we do double crochet and back post double crochet, and then rows 4, 5 and 6 is with a 5.5mm crochet hook, also double crochet and back post double crochets, and then row 7 5.5mm crochet hook and single crochets. You can make yours a little bit longer. I stopped at row 7 with mine, or 6, and then 7 was the final row of single crochet. So if you want to make yours maybe 9 rows long and then row 10 single crochets, your choice. I'll see you at the end of my row 6. I have just completed my 6th row, and as you can see now, my front post double crochets, or back post double crochet in this case because I did it on the wrong side, they formed nicely. To bear in mind that you do this is what it will look on the wrong side now because I worked mine as back post double crochets. That's what they look like. Always just check and make sure that you have the equal amount of rows on both your cuffs that you're making. Something to take note of is that you will do all the double crochets in the same stitch and all the back post or front post double crochets in the same stitch, so keep them in line. Whereas here, when we did the body of it, we were alternating, but on the cuff we keep them in exactly the same stitch, and that's what it looks like. So now I've done my 6 rows and still using my 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. I'm going to do my last row. Let's just get everything sorted here. And I'm only going to do single crochets now. So just a quick refresher. I'm going to just make 1 stitch here because again, I don't want any loops. And because this is the last row, I definitely don't want any loops when I neaten this up now. So into the stitch there we go. Bring the yarn through and pull through both the loops. So into the stitch, into both stitches, or both V's rather. Bring the yarn through and pull through the loop. So I am just going to finish this off now with a row of single crochets. There, it's all done. So let's just flick this the other way around so we can have a look at this. There we have it. Another cuff done. I love the stitch. I love the effect. Yes, me and getting all googly-eyed about being creative and making a nice stitch. Now I'm going to do exactly the same. Let's just turn this all the right way out now. But I'm going to do exactly the same now on this outer edge, right around. Exactly the same amount of rows because I've already, this is for a client, so we know exactly how long it must be from the neck down to the bottom edge where it should hang. So I'm now going to add my ribbing around. I'm guessing I'm going to use the same amount of stitches. I'm also going to do, or rather the same amount of rows, but I am not going to change the crochet hook down to a 5.5 millimeter because on the cuff I needed it to pull in slightly at the bottom. As we get towards the end, I wanted it to slightly pull in. I'm not going to do it on the ribbing that goes around the neck and the bottom edging because I don't need this to pull in any way. I need it to lie nice and flat. So I'll start off with my 7 millimeter crochet hook to do the first row, and then I'll change to my 6.5 millimeter, but that is where I'm going to stay with. Will be my 6.5 millimeter. I will again do a total of 6 rows, and the 7th row I will end off with my single crochets just like we've done here. And that is how we do the cocoon wrap. And of course we're going to work about all these little fiddly bits here. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed it, and please do show your photos. I would love to see how your wraps have come out and whether you've enjoyed this or not. And I'll see you again soon. Bye.